Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about some basic health and safety information that is needed for all businesses, whether they're small, medium, or large. The basics of health and safety. And in my role as a health and safety excellence consultant, and especially in the past 4 years, I've worked a lot with small businesses to help them get their basics in order, their health and safety knowledge in order, and compliance in order. So this presentation touches on a lot of the basics that we talk about that are important for all businesses starting out, whether you have one person employed or whether you have 10 or 20 or 100. These things are needed. So as a business owner or leader, why should you care about health and safety? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. We often think about, the legal reasons. So, employers that do not comply, that have serious injuries or fatalities could be fined by the Ministry of Labor. You can also get tickets for not wearing personal protective equipment, for example, on construction sites as individuals. But there's also a bottom line for small business in terms of financial costs. So the financial costs could mean, if somebody's injured at work, you need to hire a temporary worker, which includes training and the cost of hiring the temporary worker. Or it could mean costs such as overtime needed to cover that work. And, the other costs are possible, a loss in possible customer relations because deadlines are not met. Your employees' health and safety. So truly the most important reason is the moral reason. You want everyone to get home safely and to be safe and happy employees. And there's also the reputation. So your company's reputation is very important. You want your company to not be known as a company that has a lot of, workplace injuries or, fatalities. So they do publish those on the Ministry of Labor website. So there's all kinds of reasons why we need to do the health and safety, but starting from the legal and then and moral and then financial as well. The cost of lost time injuries and workplace fatalities. So direct costs. So oftentimes if you have somebody killed at work and you don't want to think about that, but you often have to hire a lawyer, there are costs involved. There could be Ministry of Labor fines and premium fees could increase, as your WSIB premiums, the new rate framework ties in very closely with your health and safety. So companies that that have fewer costs will continue to have lower premiums. In comparison, a company that has a lot of claims might have increases in WSIB premiums. But most importantly for small business are the indirect costs, disrupted work schedule, loss of productivity, absenteeism, high turnover, bad publicity, and also, as I mentioned, the financials of hiring a temporary worker, training them, doing overtime. That is also a cost for a small business. So who's there to help you? As I mentioned earlier, I work for WSIB. The WSIB is no-fault workers' compensation and health and safety promotion. So it is the workplace insurance in Ontario. It's legislated. Most companies, it is mandatory for workers. There's only a small number that are non-mandatory, and even at that point. So for most companies, construction, manufacturing, services, restaurants, employers have to contact the WSIB once they hire a worker to get coverage for their workers, and it's mandatory. And to find out more, your best bet is to contact the WSIB directly once you're at the point of hiring somebody for you. Just below is the logo for the Ministry of Labor. So we do different things. Oftentimes people think the WSIB is the Ministry of Labor. We're two different organizations. So if you think of WSIB, think of the insurance portion, the premiums, the compensation, for somebody being injured, so their loss of wages, the health care. Ministry of Labor, in comparison, they set the standard. They set, communicate, and enforce health and safety laws. So they also enforce them, and they have their own website and with a lot of resources on there as well. The other partners I'm just going to mention are based on your type of industry. So it could be anywhere from North for the North, for construction, electrical, and transportation, infrastructure, health and safety associations. So these associations are helpers in health and safety. They're there to provide training, resources, assistance, consultants if you want to hire them as well. And they're based on the sector. So as I mentioned, infrastructure, health and safety is construction, electrical, transportation. Workplace safety and prevention services covers agriculture, industrial, service, restaurants, for example, warehousing, other services. And then Public Service Health and Safety Association covers the sector of education, government, and healthcare. So these four partners help with health and safety, and they are to their specific sectors. There's also Workers' Health and Safety Center. They also provide training consultants, but they're not sector specific, as well as occupational health clinics for Ontario workers for occupational health services. So these are where employers can go to for more information or if they have a question related to health and safety. The Workplace Safety Insurance Board, as I mentioned, is no-fault insurance. There is a poster, and you might see the older poster, the 4 steps poster, and we've recently changed it to this particular poster in case of injury at work. And so this is something that has to be posted in the workplace in a visible location, which could be anywhere that workers can see it. And it outlines what you need to do if there's an injury at work. So if you ever forget, medical help, document, report it, and then you work with the employer to get back to work. So that's a big, it's really important to think of that last step as well, because we try and accommodate people after their injury. So WSIB, number 1, promoting health and safety. They fund the health and safety system. They provide illness and injury benefits. So they are the ones that decide if the claim is allowed and then provide health care or loss of earnings as required. And they are involved in return to work as well, getting the worker back to work after an injury. The Ministry of Labor, in comparison, they set the standards, they create the laws. So you may have seen that green book, Occupational Health and Safety Act. So as an employer, you need to get this green book and post it in a visible location. You can also download it from e-laws. And post that as well, but it has to be posted and accessible to your workers to read up on different sections of the Act. And there's another mandatory poster called Prevention Starts Here just below, and that's a free poster that you get from the Ministry of Labor. You can download it as well, so it does not have to be the glossy version, and that's a mandatory poster explaining roles and responsibilities. The Ministry of Labor also promotes public awareness and educates employers, employees and others, and they have to foster a commitment to occupational health and safety. So we all work together with the goal of improving health and safety in Ontario. One of the other requirements as an employer starting out, so you'd be getting those posters, you'd be getting a copy of the Act, but it's important to start with a health and safety policy, which is a 1-page policy saying we at company ABC are dedicated to health and safety, and employers must provide safe equipment, workers must work safely, report hazards, supervisors must supervise. And this policy can be downloaded. There are many templates, including on the Ministry of Labor website, for example. So you don't have to create a brand new one, but employers need to think about posting a copy and training your workers, explaining you have a health and safety policy, that you're dedicated to health and safety, and posting it where workers will be most likely to see it, and that is in the Act, in the Green Book. Way back in 2005, a nurse in Windsor killed by a doctor in the workplace. And as a result of this and other incidents as well and other fatalities, there were changes to the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which is that green book, in 2010. And they added workplace harassment and workplace violence to the act. And that was a huge change, requiring employers to post policies in workplace harassment and post policies in workplace violence, and creating some procedures for employees to report, the procedure, how is an allegation investigated by the employer, how is it reported, how does the worker find out what the results are. And that was a big change to the Act in 2010, the changes with workplace violence and harassment. If you recall, way back in 2009, on Christmas Eve, 4 migrant construction workers fell 13 floors to their deaths. Their names were Alexander Bondarevs, Alexei Bloomberg, Vladimir Korostin, and Faisulo Fazilov. As a result of this tragic event, 2 things came. All the health and safety partners worked together and said this can't happen again. So they came up with 2 changes. One in 2014, basic awareness training. This is mandatory training for all workers in Ontario, regardless of sector. And then the other training is working at heights training in construction, which has been around for a number of years as well. And it's mandatory for construction workers working at heights. The awareness training, you can log into the Ministry of Labour website and click on and do this awareness training online if you wish. There's awareness training for workers, which is a one-time course. It's not once a year, it's a one-time course that all workers have to take, and they print up a certificate afterwards. Supervisors actually have to take the supervisor course and the worker course, because they're both supervisors and workers actually in the Act. Because they do work as well, and they have the requirements of both. So they have to do both types of trainings. The training takes about 45 minutes online. You also have the option of either ordering the books, which are free of charge, or downloading them from the Ministry of Labour website and training your workers in a group, and then creating a written training record at the end, so that you have proof that you have trained your workers and you have that on hand if you're ever asked about that. So that's important. So if you think back, before you hire anyone, before you hire any co-op students or hire anybody, as part of the orientation, all workers should have this training completed, because it covers basic roles and responsibilities when it comes to health and safety, but also covers what's a hazard. What do I do when I see a hazard? So that workers know what their responsibilities are and that they're protected and they have rights under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. The working at heights training is a minimum standard for construction workers. People on construction projects must successfully complete a working at heights training program, and employers must ensure training records are available. So you'd keep a record of this in a file folder, so you have all your workers that are working for you. If you work in construction, you have a copy of their certificates. And to find out who is a provider, you can log on to the Ministry of Labour website, but also if you're looking at your health and safety partner that we talked about earlier, you could also go to IHSA, Infrastructure Health and Safety Association, directly and look at the courses and sign up for a course. And they need to be renewed every 3 years. Businesses always have questions related to, do I need a health and safety rep? Do I need a joint health and safety committee? And so the purpose of a health and safety rep really is to be a voice for the workers. So it should be a worker rep, for the workers. So if you have, and you always count the owner. So if there's 2 owners, that's 2. Count them as 2. If you have 5 or fewer total people working for you, including the owners, there is no requirement for a health and safety rep or joint health and safety committee. 6 to 19 workers, including owners, part-time, casual, everyone counts as 1. So each person is one. Then there is a need for a health and safety rep. Health and safety rep is a rep that's a worker selected by the workers to represent the workers. And some of their roles include monthly inspections, meeting with the employer, discussing health and safety topics with the employer. You'd be posting their name on your health and safety board so that workers know who to go to if there's an issue that they're not comfortable directing at the employer. They can go through their health and safety rep. There is actually a training online that's available that's fairly new. It's about a year old, and it's online training that costs about $25 for your health and safety rep. So if you're interested, or if you're at the point where you need one, they can get better trained if they take that course. So that is available. For any companies that have 20 or more workers, the standard changes. You now need a joint health and safety committee, which includes one worker and one manager. So one worker, the worker has to be have non-managerial functions, and the manager could be anyone. It could be the manager, it could be the owner of the company as well. The big difference between the requirements of health and safety rep and joint health and safety committee, obviously it's the numbers, 20 or more, but the training requirement for a joint health and safety committee is called certification parts 1 and 2. So, and these are, you can go to your Health and Safety Association, log on and sign up for it, and there is a cost involved and a time period that you take. Part 1 is 3 days, part 2 is 2 days, and you have about a year to complete both parts. So that's something you may consider working on as part of your health and safety action plan. Probably the first thing to start with, if you start a company, you're getting started with health and safety, and probably the first thing is, creating a visible presence in terms of health and safety through a health and safety board. It doesn't actually have to be a board. It could be, these things could be posted anywhere. And the things you'd put on there is the health and safety policy, that one-page policy. If there's any Ministry of Labor orders or compliance orders, you put them there, but chances are probably for small business you wouldn't have too many of those. Workplace violence and harassment policy, to post that on your board. Joint health and safety committee members' names and locations, or the worker rep names and location. Certificates of the first aiders, okay, and their locations if needed. Those 2 posters we talked about, prevention starts here, and in case of injury at work. A copy of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the first aid requirements, which are WSIB requirements. And we mentioned this, though it's not health and safety, there is a mandatory employment standards poster that you need to put up. So these are kind of the minimum standards for your health and safety posting requirements for a company. There is a resource available called a Small Business Toolkit, and this has a lot of information for small businesses and resources to start their health and safety program. When it comes to the WSIB, we all often think of the poster that we have to post up in a visible location. And it's really important because, sometimes steps are forgotten. So the first thing, if someone's injured, they have to get medical help. And the employer has to provide first aid. So always keep that in mind, to have a first aid kit. Make sure you're following the first aid regulations, the Regulation 1101. Pay the first day of wages, that means the day of injury. Report the injury to the WSIB on this form called the Form 7, which is online. Contact the worker as soon as possible and offer modified duties as soon as possible. So for some cases, the person may not have any time lost. They might just be checking things out, or going to the doctor. And so really it's that medical treatment that prompts you to fill out that Form 7. And prior to that, it would be an incident reporting process. So you still have to document the incident, but once they go see a doctor, it has to be reported to WSIB. And then your goal is to get them back to work as soon as you can, within their abilities, obviously, and within what you have. If you have modified duties, sometimes you need to think of some ways for them to come back. You know, and if you know they're unable to come back, there'd be loss of earnings possibly paid to them, as well as their health care would be covered for any of these allowed claims. First aid, Regulation 1101. All employers covered by the Workplace Safety Insurance Board, Workplace Safety Insurance Act, are required to have first aid equipment, facilities, and trained personnel in all workplaces. So that means getting a first aid kit, which is as specified in those requirements. So won't have all kinds of extra pills or anything like that, like Advil. It's very basic to have bandages, gauze, Band-Aids, etc. And it's listed all in the first aid requirements, what you need to have in your first aid box. But you also need a certified first aider based on the number of people employed per shift. The WSIB has online services. And so if you're registering with WSIB, you'll likely log into your account. You can register online or you can register by calling, but it's up to you. You'd be reporting your premiums, paying your premiums, getting a clearance, so I'll explain what that is. View your statement online, your WSIB statement. Report an injury or illness online. There's also a new thing called Compass where you can see your health and safety trends online as well, and that's after you log in. So there's a lot of things we can do online at the WSIB now to make it easier for small business. Clearance certificates, we get a lot of questions about these. So clearance certificate is for employers. The employers must request a clearance from subcontractors and contractors. So what that confirms is that they are registered with the WSIB and they're in good standing, which means their premiums are paid and their premiums are up to date. And this is valid for 90 days. The good news is this is available online. And please keep in mind that all this proves is that they have WSIB, they're covered, they're fully covered, and that you're not responsible for the injury in terms of the payment, loss of earnings or medical, because they have their own insurance. It does not prove that that contractor is safe or has any health and safety procedures. It's strictly for the insurance reasons. And so if you log in online, you can create a list of your subcontractors, for example. And once you have that list, it renews automatically, constantly every 90 days. And if the subcontractor is not paid, so let's say they're behind in their payments to WSIB, you would get an email notifying you of that. So then you'd be following up or not using that contractor or following up with a contractor. So that's really a good service. It's really changed over the years. New at the WSIB, we have a number of things that are new. I'm going to start with the middle thing called the new premium rate setting model. And then we'll talk about the new Health and Safety Excellence Program and Compass. So there are changes with the way premiums are set. I'm not sure if people have accounts now or if they're going to be registering. We're introducing a new premium rate setting model that changes the way we classify employers and the way premium rates are for all 300,000 businesses registered with us. So, as a summary, it's based on your classification unit, so the type of work you do, so that'll, and then there are subclasses as well, and risk bands based on your previous history or previous injuries. So what is the big difference is that now you have greater control of your premiums based on your health and safety records. So a company that has many claims, for example, many lost time claims, might see increases in premiums, and vice versa. So if you don't have many claims, you'll consistently keep a lower premium. And so it's based more on the individual employer's experience rating rather than the group that they belong to, in that previously it was based on a rate group, and if the rate group, based on what they do, so let's say construction rate group, let's say concrete forming, they may pay more in premiums because they had more accidents due to the nature and the hazards that they work with. But now there's a greater emphasis on the individual employer. So individual employers have greater control over their premiums based on their own experience as well. So that we have webinars happening. In fact, I think there's one coming up, I think it's next week, on rate framework. But to find out, just look on the WSIB rate framework site, and you can email any questions about that. So if you currently do have an account and you want to know how it's changing, you should have gotten a letter. But if you're just signing up, you'd just be contacting the WSIB to find out, how this works and how you pay premiums and how do you affect your premiums. One of the big changes with the WSIB, a couple of years ago, we wanted to recognize commitment to health and safety for small business, because we know that it's increasingly challenging for small businesses to not only comply but to become leaders in health and safety. So we wanted to recognize the leaders in health and safety that are small business leaders that employ fewer than 50 people, FTEs, and we provide awards for the top 3 every year. And the way they apply is through a written submission, and then the top entries are visited by consultants and then they're decided upon in terms of top 3 winners, and the winners receive the recognition, which is really important, but also a financial recognition. So a couple of years ago, the gold went to SG Cunningham in Waterloo, silver went to Zero Environmental in Kitchener, and bronze was a bakery, bread and butter bakery in Kingston. So these were the winners way back in 2018. This year we had, I don't have the names of the winners, but one of them was even a roofing company. So we have a range of types of employers that apply for the Small Business Award, but also win and are health and safety leaders, and they're really important to have these people in small business, representing small business, to look up to and to be leaders to drive so that other small businesses can see them and have the same health and safety goals as well. The other big changes, as I mentioned, we had the rate framework change happening, and so as a result of that, the way the premiums are paid, we started a new health and safety excellence program. And so this program is for every WSIB registered employer. So you have to be registered with WSIB. It's voluntary, and it's basically the goal of this is to work on health and safety topics, so 1 to 5 topics as specified in the program, to get support in them to implement those topics. And it could be leadership, health and safety leadership could be a topic. Roles and responsibilities is a topic. Each hazard that an employer has is a topic. So you could have a forklift program, okay, forklift procedure and program, and that's a topic. And so we want to recognize employers that complete these topics, and they are recognized financially and non-financially. It would be financial rebates, and also, other types of recognition, such as certificates and online badges that are visible in that new program called Compass, which if you are registered, you might have found out about it. And it shows your health and safety trends, and it shows if you're a member of the Health and Safety Excellence Program. So it's really a good thing to have that badge system. This program just launched, and we have all the information online about the program, about who the providers are, and the providers are all across Ontario. And not only that, some do webinars, so some do offer webinars or one-on-one, and it really is, you know, the employer looking at the program would be looking at, you know, what suits me, and, you know, can I make it to meetings, or do I just want to do only webinars, or where am I located? So those are kind of the things you'd be looking at before signing up for the program, if that interests you. But really, to find out more, you can sign up for an information session, which is on our website. And you can just go, it's free of charge to find out more about the program and the financial and non-financial incentives that are available. The benefits of the Health and Safety Excellence Program: it's the only financial incentive program offered by the WSIB. It's aligned with a new premium rate setting model. And you get dedicated support to meet your minimum health and safety requirements and beyond, and the opportunity to improve your workplace health and safety culture. That's a really interesting addition. So employers that sign up with the Health and Safety Excellence Program have the option of taking part in health and safety culture surveys with their employees. So their employees would complete the culture survey, and then the employer would gather that information and possibly give that same survey every year to see changes in health and safety culture in their workplace after taking part in the program and working on health and safety topics. So that's a huge bonus with this program that we're really excited about. The customer journey in this program: you really attend an information session if that makes sense to you. If you are registered with the WSIB and if you are interested, you choose an approved provider, so they have a list of them. Select 1 to 5 topics to work on for the year, which is your action plan. Develop those topics with your provider. So it's really the provider that's helping you through. Then you demonstrate, submit evidence of implementation. It could be videos, it could be a photo of your health and safety board, it could be, you know, your procedure, training records, something to show that you've implemented it. And then you receive rebates and non-financial recognition, such as a digital badge, to show that you are part of the program, but also you've implemented these topics and you're dedicated to health and safety. So what is your action plan? So you might be just starting out your business. So you may just be thinking about, do I need WSIB coverage? What kind of things do I need to post, and what kind of things do I need to train my workers in? You may also have been, have a business in place, and you may be at a different stage. But certainly, some easy things to start with is your posting requirements, such as your prevention starts here poster and the in case of injury or illness at work poster, the WSIB poster. Those are 2 mandatory postings. First aid requirements, getting a copy of the requirements and posting that as well, getting your first aid kits in place, getting a first aid trained person available per shift. And then really your awareness training, the worker and supervisor awareness training, signing up, doing it online, having a plan in place so that everyone completes it by your specified date, and you keep a copy of their certificate. And it's a one-time course. It's not an annual course that needs to be renewed. And so those are kind of some quick things that you can start with to start implementing your health and safety program. Okay, so I've kind of summarized a lot of the basics. Are there any questions that we have from the group?
So thank you, Lasha. So we do have one question. So the question is, do all members of the JHSC need the certification for Part 1 and 2, or is it only the one worker and one manager required to have the training?
It's only one worker and one manager that requires training. So you could have a committee that has, as long as there's 50-50 or more workers and managers, you could have 5 workers, 2 managers, but only one of each has to have the certification training.
Okay, perfect. So we only have one question in. So if anyone else has any questions, you can go to your panel under questions and just type one out. So maybe we'll give a few minutes just to see if any more come in. Okay, so we have a few more that came in. So a question is, can we legally hold back payment to a subcontractor for not providing a WSIB certificate and submit it on their behalf?
So the answer is no, but you certainly contact. So essentially you want to make sure they're paid and up to date before employing them. So that's always been that you have to get the clearance before starting work. And so that's always been the case. Now you can, if they don't want to get WSIB coverage, and I'm not talking about, I'm talking about certain subcontractors, you can pay for their WSIB on an ongoing basis. That's fine. That's an option. It's always been an option because they are, in terms of being your worker, you have that option as well. But really, so I would suggest you contact the WSIB directly with these questions because you may have a specific scenario that applies to you. But generally speaking, you should always have the clearance before starting work.
Okay, and then another question is, how or what can we do to include H&S to include our customers in our indoor playground?
Oh, what do you mean? Like to have rules, you're saying? Or what do you, I don't quite understand what the question is.
Okay, so we'll get the person who asked the question. So this is Farouk Tarfiq. I'm going to open up his mic so that he can ask you. Hello, Farouk?
Yes, hi.
Hi, so did you want to just elaborate on your question for Lasha?
Yes, thank you. We have an indoor playground. We get a lot of customers, and sometimes customers don't understand that safety of our structures, our equipment, that adults are not allowed. We have stickers, labels everywhere. We have on the walls, we tell people, but they still tend to sometimes just do it and go on the equipment, which is the safety of all children. How can we educate our customers how important that is, besides just having signs, and which a lot of times they just ignore it. So how can we get our customers to understand how serious we are about health and safety?
So I'm hearing that it sounds like it's the adults that are kind of going on the equipment. Is that what you're saying, kind of?
Yeah.
And not fun. So really the bottom line is an orientation, and I know, they might just be coming in. I don't know what kind of business it is, but they might just be coming in for 2 hours just to play, just for fun, just to go play. But to give them an orientation or have the rules set out in terms of, you must not, adults must not enter, go on equipment if they're found doing so. So there have to be some consequences. So you might say you'd be told to leave or something, whatever the consequence is, based on that. But it's really up to you to set the standard, and you can't get them. You just have to enforce whatever your standard is. So what that means is if you have a rule, adults can't go on the playground equipment, you have to tell them before, maybe have it in writing, have signs up. and before they start playing, they say you can't go on the equipment, for example. For the children, and if you're found that, then we will remove you from the I'm just giving that as an example. It might not be the answer, but we'll remove you from the premises or we'll ask you to leave because this is an important safety rule and we take it seriously. And that could be kind of at the beginning when you're talking and they're paying their fees, and have visible signs maybe as well. You don't have to pay a lot of money, but just, have it on paper on the wall, maybe on a piece of paper. But it's important for you to, really it's up to you to enforce it. So you have the rule, you've created the standard, but if you're not there, you won't see it. So you do have to kind of observe and kind of inspect, periodically.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have a question from a caller. So Diane Austin, if you want to ask your question.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, hi, Diane.
Sorry. Just looking to see, like, we have companies that come in and do work on an ongoing basis. Do we have to get renewed clearances from them, like once a year, or once they provide one, is that good enough? Or
good, that's a very good question. So if you are registered with the WSIB, you can log into e-services, which has been around for a few years, and you can create, and so I would call the WSIB to help you get this set up. You can create a list of your regular contractors or subcontractors that come in, and it just renews. Once you have that list of those people, you never have to ask for a clearance. It'll renew every 90 days automatically.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that. So that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so another question is it a requirement for every injury to be reported to WSIB?
So that's a very good question. So no, not every injury. It's once they require health care. So once that worker, so if it's just a cut and then, you bandage it up, you would create a record in your first aid only. But if that cut, let's say, is a bit deeper and they say, you know what, I'm going to the doctors or I'm going to the walk-in clinic or hospital, once they have to go see medical treatment, any type of medical treatment, then the employer has the obligation to submit it. So submit the Form 7, it's the employer's report of injury, and that can be done online. But please note it, you only have 3 days to submit it, and that's stated online as well. So once you think they're going to the hospital or they're about to go to the hospital, you submit that form. And what's going on behind the scenes, that hospital or that walk-in clinic or that doctor, they are submitting a form as well. And so it doesn't mean the person's going to lose work. It could be they're going there, they're getting some stitches, for example. That's called a no lost time claim where they're not missing work. But by law, you have to report it once you go to the doctors, and the doctor by law has to report it to WSIB as well.
So someone has a question where they can request the basic safety awareness training booklets.
It's the Ministry of Labor. Go to the Ministry of Labor website, then it says, are you going to employment standards or health and safety? Go to health and safety. And if you look under the health and safety page, I believe it's under the resources. It shows awareness training in 4 steps. You click on it, then it takes you to a page where it shows 2 different pictures, and you launch the worker training with one one picture and the supervisor training with the other. So that's the online training. Now, if you need to download the want to do it in a group, you can do that as well. That's always an option too. So sometimes it's more convenient if you have 10 people coming in, one morning, you might find it more convenient to do the training in person, and you don't have to hire a company to do it. You can do it yourself. It's not meant to be, complicated, but you certainly do the online one. It prints up a certificate afterwards, and that's through the Ministry of Labor health and safety page, and then you go under resources, health and safety awareness training, and then click on there, launch the worker course or the supervisor course online.
Okay, so another listener has a question. She says she's a small business of a woman's only gym, and she's wondering if she should contact health and safety immediately because she's been open since May.
You mean to contact WSIB? So contact WSIB, find out if it's a mandatory coverage one. So I'm not sure if gyms are, so gyms might not be. So call a WSIB and find out, do I have to have coverage? Is it one of the firms that requires mandatory coverage? And even if it doesn't, you have you can opt into it. So, and I'll give you the example. For example, like dentist's office, for example, it's not mandatory for dentist's office to have WSIB per se, but we do get a lot of dentist office choosing WSIB rather than private insurance. And the big difference, it's no fault insurance. And, it's there, you'd have to look into it yourself if it's optional for you. You have to look at the benefits, the pros and the cons of each. But first thing you need to know, is it mandatory coverage for gyms? I'm thinking it's not, but I'm not the expert in this. So you have to contact WSIB to find out. And the number is 416-344-1000, and they'll tell you.
Okay, thank you. So another question is, for the awareness training, both worker and supervisor, is it required to maintain certificates, or would an email from staff confirming it is completed sufficient as part of the records?
No, email's not sufficient. So if they do it online, you need the certificate. If you do it in a group, if you go to that page that says the health and safety awareness training, it has the links. At the bottom, they have this thing called sample record keeping template. So they even provide a template of how you obtain the signatures. So if you do it in person, how you obtain the signatures from the workers and document that, and the employer has to keep the record. So it's either or. So it's either the record keeping template or something similar, you might have your own, or the certificate. But an email would not be proof of anything.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Now, I think you can email those certificates, though. So if they complete the certificate, I'm trying to think. I can't remember if they can, but I think you could email those. But regardless, it still has to be the certificate on there, whether it's you photocopy it or they email it to you, the certificate or the record keeping template.
Okay, so those are all the questions that have come in. But again, if anyone has any more questions, we'll take some more. So just on the right panel, go to questions. Or raise your hand if you're on the phone. So we'll just give this a few minutes. Okay, so we actually have one come in. So the question is, can a rep come out to our small business and run through a checklist of what may be missing?
So as I mentioned, I work for WSIB, and I'm now a consultant in the Health and Safety Excellence Program. However, there is a checklist that's online. There is a small business health and safety checklist on the Ministry of Labor website. So I would start with that. So that is available online. And then that resource that's in the slides, with the small business resource that, is one of the slides that I covered, that is somewhere to go to get started on your health and safety program. So start with a checklist. So what it does, when you look at that checklist, is, how many workers do you have, and then it says you need to have this, 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 and this. So that's kind of a start in combination. So I would start with that, and then look at that guide that was provided in the slides as well, to see what you need to have. Because what you're looking at kind of to start with is really basic compliance, and that's like your posting requirements, your awareness training, do you need a rep? And those are kind of the things we covered, and that's going to be covered in that checklist to begin with, and then explore a little more in that guide as well.
Okay, thank you. So thank you everyone for your questions. That's all the time we have for our webinar today. We ask that you take just a few minutes to answer today's exit survey questions and let us know where we can improve and what topics would be of interest to you in the future. Our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, March 12th, 2020, and will be on employment contracts, why and how. So be sure to mark your calendars. For more local, relevant, and timely labor market information, you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, or you can go to our workinginPeelhalton.com website. On behalf of myself, our speaker Lasha, and the entire team at the Peel Halton Local Employment Planning Council, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure spending this last hour with you. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.